Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today I'm doing another video. Today is the start of this new mysterious next step related series, I suppose you could say. I've been working really hard on it this week. Today's video has 8 pages worth here. These are double-sided pages that I've written. It's taken a lot to get to this point of filming it, but I'm so excited to have had such a blast writing all the stuff down, all the note taking, and I just can't wait to kind of get started now. Now, before we officially jump into this new Next Step series, I just wanted to say that this isn't really an original series. It has kind of been done before in a certain way. So Moki Ariana 3, Alicia, whatever you may call her, did do a similar What If series to this one. Now, all of the What If videos I'm doing do not cover the same topic she did. However, I do just want to say that this whole series was inspired by the one she did. So Alicia, if you're watching this, thank you for doing it. So as you can tell by the title, today's video is called What If Michelle Bought the Next Step? So as a Next Step fan, I've always kind of wondered what would have happened if she hadn't have gone off to become a professional dancer. What would have happened to A-Troop? What would have happened to Emily? And today you're going to find out. So these are kind of just like my opinions of what would have happened. So obviously the Next Step writers might have a different opinion. You might have a different opinion. But this is just what I think would happen if Michelle did buy the next step with Emily. So here we go. I'm literally so excited to do this. Like, I've been waiting all week to do it. So I guess we better start with the Next Step season 7 off season, because within that we saw Michelle tell Emily she didn't want to be part of the next step anymore. She wanted to go off by herself. But if Michelle did buy the next step, then it would be very different. So instead of Michelle leaving, Michelle and Emily would meet in the office, and Emily would give Michelle the pink pen just like she did in the off season in the real universe. So Michelle and Emily would take a seat, Miss Kate would be there, and initially this mini episode would just be them really signing the papers to own the next step. So this would be a very monumental moment for the Next Step fans and for Michelle and Emily, and also Miss Kate, who is letting go of something that she's held on for so many years. I also thought instead of Emily like protesting in Studio A about the next step, she could actually go there and have like a coffee with Michelle and just celebrate the fact that they finally have bought the next step together and discuss what really comes next for the studio. So that is kind of the Next Step off season in a nutshell. I mean, we have so many Next Step season 7 episodes to get through, so I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but let's get into season 7 episode 1. So season 7 episode 1. So just like in the normal reality, A-Troop run in, they do their tell the story dance. Rochelle does like that awesome flip across the stage, and basically the first like 5 minutes is basically the same. But once they finish the dance, instead of Michelle like packing up her things and running in and dancing with them, Miss Kate actually comes in and she goes over, hugs A-Troop and basically says goodbye. A-Troop at this point are a little bit like, Miss Kate saying goodbye, like what's going on, because they haven't actually been told that Michelle and Emily are buying the studio. So after Miss Kate says goodbye, Michelle and Emily then run in and they announce that they have bought the next step. Obviously the reaction is bittersweet. They're all devastated Miss Kate is leaving, but they're ecstatic that Michelle and Emily have bought the next step because they know it's just going to be an amazing environment. So later on in the episode, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's not Michelle's goodbye, so it's kind of just like a random next step episode. But Michelle and Emily are sat in the office discussing dances for nationals, discussing plane tickets, discussing things like that. So they're just kind of preparing to go to nationals. So it's all very exciting. You can kind of tell that the nationals is coming back round again, and there's a really, really good excitement in the air. In the end of the episode, very similar to what actually happened, Lily does walk in, and I kind of thought it could be like Michelle and Emily were just talking in Studio A instead of them obviously saying goodbye. So Lily walks in, and obviously they're both kind of torn whether Lily should audition for the next step. So Michelle says that she feels as if Lily deserves an opportunity to, because obviously Michelle's following her heart. That's always what she does. So that's kind of the reasoning behind that. And Emily's kind of like, do we let her in? She caused drama. I used to be like that. I know drama's not good. But at the end of the day, Emily got her second chance, so she wants to give Lily a second chance. We're now going to fast forward like half a season. So we're going to do a massive jump to season 7, episode 7, just because everything in between will kind of stay the same. So if you didn't know, season 7, episode 7 is when Nick invites, oh my gosh, what's she called? Jade, is she called? I can't remember. Like the guest lady coming and work with A-Troop. That episode, you know what I'm on about. So instead of that happening, Michelle ends up getting a Dance Mania invitation, just the same way as Nick did. So Michelle's really excited. She's secretly a big fan of Dance Mania. She's watched it. I mean, maybe her and like Kingston or something have been talking about it, something like that. But anyway, Michelle is really, really happy that she's found this invitation, and she is going to apply for Dance Mania. She's going to apply for A Troop to go because she thinks it's an incredible opportunity. So Emily obviously disagrees. She's against it just because of the whole national situation. She knows that they can't do both. So Emily is like, no, please do not go to Dance Mania. That's against what I'm for. So Michelle obviously gives in to Emily. She loves her. She puts it down, says, you know what? Okay, that's fine. But Michelle isn't being honest, you see. Michelle then goes out to A Troop and tells them that she wants them to audition for Dance Mania, despite what Emily had said, because obviously if Emily found out Michelle was going behind her back to go to Dance Mania, then, you know, that would just not be good. So she explains how Emily doesn't know, Emily's against it, but because so many of them have watched Dance Mania, they agree to keep it quiet, and they're really, really excited to go and audition. Michelle tells Emily that she's going to go and rehearse the final dance for nationals, like create it, choreograph it, but she's actually choreographing the audition dance for Dance Mania. So obviously Emily doesn't suspect what's going on. She just thinks they're creating an amazing dance for nationals, but Michelle's being very secretive. I guess I thought it would be nice if the episode ends with Michelle doing a nice solo in Studio A. She's kind of feeling torn at this point because she's doing what she feels is right. She's doing what she thinks is right for A Troop, but she feels as if she is betraying Emily, and because she cares that much about her, she just doesn't really want to do that. So she really feels torn inside. But at the end of the day, she made the decision for A Troop to go to Dance Mania, and that is what they're going to do. So, jumping a couple more episodes, we then get to Season 7, Episode 10. This episode starts with Michelle getting ready to leave. She's preparing A Troop for the Dance Mania auditions, and she's told Emily that Rochelle has managed to get A Troop into an exclusive Absolute Dance convention, which is why she's taking them all out of the studio for the day. I mean, Michelle at this point is like a mastermind. She's figured it all out, and she's just like on fire right now. So, A Troop all arrives, very similar to the scene we saw last time with their suitcases, their bags. They're all ready, they're like really nervous, but overall they're just so excited. But however, Piper is having a few doubts, so I thought it would be nice to see Piper kind of have a little bit more of her anxiety storyline in Season 7, so I'm going to bring that in to this alternate reality. So Piper doesn't feel anxious about the dance, but she really does feel guilty that Emily doesn't know what's going on. So A Troop decide to go, and Piper obviously isn't there. They're kind of stressing out, but they had to go to the audition. So Piper ends up calling Emily and explaining the situation, and obviously Emily is furious that Michelle has gone behind her back and taken them to Dance Mania. However, Emily doesn't tell Piper how infuriated she is because she doesn't want to upset her and break her heart. So Piper does end up managing to get to the Dance Mania audition, and A Troop do the audition. They smash it, just like they did in Season 7, Episode 10 in the normal season. But Piper didn't dance her best just because she feels guilty. Now for Michelle, that she's betrayed Michelle, but then she betrayed Emily, she betrayed A Troop, and she just doesn't really know what to do. So once the dancers return to the studio, Michelle gets called into the office with Emily. So obviously Emily is not very happy that Michelle went behind her back, so they have a huge argument, like colossal, like similar to like the Season 5 fight where they were like taking each other's things, banning each other from seeing people, like that sort of fight. It was not good. And Piper stood outside the office just feeling really guilty about what she feels like she's caused. Like she could have stopped it from happening, but she did do what she felt was right. Emily does say something very controversial. She says, I don't think I can co-own a studio with someone who lies to me. And obviously that is a big statement because Emily and Michelle own the next step, and obviously it leaves the fans wondering who's going to own the next step if Emily doesn't want to own it with Michelle anymore. So that's kind of one of the cliffhangers at the end of the episode. And obviously the other cliffhanger is that Amy picks up the phone to Dance Mania, and that is kind of when the episode ends. But I kind of thought it would be really, really like cliffhangery, I don't know if that's a word, if Emily got the ownership forms on the table, so everybody like thought that Michelle and Emily would not own the studio anymore, and it would really leave the fans hanging. So season 7 episode 11. So Emily and Michelle are sat at the desk just after the cliffhanger that Emily and Michelle might not be owning the next step anymore. Emily describes how she feels, she explains how she feels betrayed, and it's just more of like a calm environment, just because that is how I feel as if they'll both respond better in. So Michelle kind of explains how she felt as if it was right for the next step. She felt as if it was right for A Troop. And at the end of the day, Michelle explains that they signed a partnership form together and they knew that they would have bumps along the way. And Emily gives in. She loves Michelle really, and they kind of just put it behind them, and they kind of just agree that it can't happen again. But equally, if A Troop get into Dance Mania, they will have to make a really difficult decision. So meanwhile, A Troop have received the news that they got into Dance Mania. Everybody's ecstatic, everybody's ready, everybody just can't wait to get choreographing. But when Emily and Michelle find out the news that they got into Dance Mania, Emily explains how she forgives Michelle, but she really thinks they should go to nationals. But Michelle gives in because she wants to save her friendship with Emily. So A Troop and Emily and Michelle have a really difficult conversation. So Emily and Michelle announced that A Troop cannot go to Dance Mania if they want to go to nationals, and obviously it causes a huge strike. Everybody is fuming that they can't go to Dance Mania. So Piper is feeling just overwhelmed at this point. She feels like it's her fault again, they're not going to Dance Mania, and she just doesn't really know what to do with herself. She just doesn't know where to fit in at this point. However, whilst everybody is arguing and shouting, Piper takes Michelle to one side and explains that she was the one who told Emily, just because she felt as if that was what's right for her. She felt as if it was a weight lifted off her shoulders. Michelle wasn't mad at Piper. She says that she kind of did the right thing because now everything is out in the open and that it isn't gonna be lying anymore. She basically just thanks Piper for giving Emily a conversation that she would have had to do otherwise. After a massive argument in Studio A, full-on screaming and like angriness, Emily and Michelle decide that maybe A Troop should go if they're feeling this passionate about Dance Mania. So they end up letting A Troop go to the Dance Mania show, and Nationals is kind of forgotten about. I mean, I know it's crazy to say, but Emily really does love A Troop and she's going to do whatever they feel is right, just like Michelle had said. So she kind of forgets about Nationals. However, it kind of hits her later on in the episode. So later on in the episode, Emily is in the office. She's crying because her dreams of going to Nationals again have been crushed. She's eating cake just like she did in the actual world. And she's just devastated, really, because this is everything she's worked for gone down the drain, really. Well, another cliffhanger. So this is kind of the end of the first part of season 7. So Emily and Michelle are just sat down discussing how if A Troop go to Dance Mania, this could be the end of the next step, because obviously they don't think B Troop or J Troop are ready to go to nationals, so they've kind of accepted that they're not going. But what would happen after this? That's kind of what they're thinking, and it leaves the fans wondering, could this be the end of the next step? What's going to happen? So it's a massive cliffhanger to have, but it's really effective. So I think it would be a great one. So the rest of the season stays the same. So the Dance Mania filming company come in, Miss Angela pops in, all of that stuff happens. But once we get to season 7, episode 17, this is where it gets interesting. So in the real world, this is where Michelle comes back to Emily, the Secret Admirer episode. That was literally my favourite episode of season 7. So that is kind of going to happen, but a little bit differently. So brace yourselves, because it's a little bit shocking. Michelle was busy booking flights for Dance Mania when Emily brings her a letter. So I thought it would be nice if we kind of heard a little bit more about the studio heads kind of booking stuff for Dance Mania whilst the dancers work on the dancey stuff. So anyway, Emily brings her in a letter and she says that somebody had left it in Studio A that morning when she unlocked the studio. So she just picked it up, kept it to herself, and then gave it to Michelle. So obviously Michelle opens it feeling a little bit confused, and in the letter it says $100 can buy you a lot, but it can't buy you a friendship. So obviously Michelle and Emily are like, what is going on? What is this? Who is this? What does this mean? Obviously they're really confused. So they kind of just put the letter to one side. They have more important things to worry about and they carry on with their day. However, later on, Michelle returns to her office just to kind of work a little bit more on the Dance Mania schedule, stuff like that. And she finds a box in there, kind of similar to how Emily finds the box. She opens it and inside there's another note and it says, "You were the first person to notice a big change in my life." So Michelle then chats for Emily because she thinks if anybody knows who on earth this is, Emily probably is going to know who they are. But again, they're both confused. who is this person sending them gifts and things? So Michelle again puts it to one side and carries on her day. So Michelle and Emily end up going to Studio One to kind of just check everything's okay in there, checking that like A Troop are okay, because there's some dancers in there rehearsing a trio or something for Dance Mania. And they end up going into the small office in there, and they actually find another letter. Who would have thought? So they pick up another letter, and in it says, if you want to know who's been writing you these letters, then you'd better run to Studio A. Like, I know this isn't as like effective as like the one Emily got because it rhymed, but I literally spent ages trying to figure out something that rhymed with Studio A that sounded relevant, but I kind of gave up. So that's the message we've got this time. So Michelle runs to Studio A, and she ends up leaving Emily behind because Michelle can run quicker than Emily in this world. So anyway, Michelle runs into Studio A, very similar to the atmosphere when Emily runs into Studio One, and we get like the oh my gosh, somebody I know is in the studio. So then the camera faces that person, and Riley is back to the next step. Obviously, like, what? This is confusing. Why is Riley back? But anyway, so Riley is back, and very similar to what Michelle said to Emily, Riley says, just hear me out. Like, just like how Michelle said. And then it's the end of the episode. So, you know, suspicious. Why don't you just comment why you think Riley's back at the next step? Just do that for a second, because I'd love to know why you think she's back. But anyway, here we go. This is why Riley's back at the next step. So Michelle and Riley spend most of the day sitting in the next seat, and Riley is explaining that she has been asked to host an international tour, because obviously Riley left the next step to go to business school, and then once she qualified, she then decided that she wanted to host her own tour. So she thinks that Michelle is the perfect star dancer, and Michelle is obviously flattered. She doesn't know what to say. I mean, she still wants to be a professional dancer at this point. So Michelle is just shocked, really, because these are all her dreams coming true. She doesn't know what to do with Emily. Like, she's just really freaked out. Riley asks Michelle if she could possibly see her dance, because she just wants to check she's still good enough. Obviously, Riley knows Michelle's good enough, but she just wants an excuse to see Michelle dance. So whilst Riley's waiting for Michelle in Studio A, Emily then walks in and sees Riley, and I thought it would be nice if we had a really, really cute Emily and Riley moment. So Emily runs in and sees Riley and gives her a big hug and is like, oh my gosh, like, why are you here? Like, obviously Emily's like freaking out as well. So Michelle then enters and she performs her solo in front of Riley and Emily, and obviously they're both blown away. And also Emily hasn't seen Michelle dance in a really long time either, so it's really nice for her too. So Riley then says that Michelle is perfect for the tour, and obviously Emily doesn't know. So Emily runs off and she's crying. She just doesn't know what to do, and she's upset again. Like, she's already been upset like 3 times, like, in this season. So Michelle's just feeling guilty, basically. So Riley tells Michelle to think about her offer. She doesn't want to rush her, and she kind of just gives her the opportunity to have a bit of time to think about it. So Michelle finds Emily, and obviously Emily is heartbroken. Her best friend might be leaving, but at the end of the day, Emily supports Michelle whatever she does, and she knows at heart this is Michelle's dream. This is what Michelle wants to do. So she tells Michelle that she needs to go and do this tour because she wouldn't want to hold her back, and she just said, you know, the next step will be fine without you, we'll get through it. So Emily tells Michelle to go, basically, but Michelle says she's going to stay to at least Dance Mania, but she just still doesn't know what to do. So the rest of the season stays the same, but we get a lot of scenes with Michelle like distant and trying to think about what she wants to do. So the season 7 finale is all the same, apart from the conversation Michelle and Emily have. So Michelle goes to tell Emily that she has actually decided to go on the tour, and obviously Emily is really happy for Michelle. She supports her. However, Emily is a little bit concerned about what might happen to the next step, but Michelle says that she would like to gift her kind of 50% of the next step to Emily, because she kind of just thinks that she'd rather just give it to Emily than her get all this money that she doesn't really need. So Emily obviously is tearful. She's overjoyed, really, that she still gets to keep the next step, but heartbroken Michelle's leaving. So they hug it out, and then they go and watch the finals at Dance Mania. So then I thought it would be nice if season 8 episode 1, we got a very similar episode to season 7 episode 1 where Michelle does leave the next step. However, it's more monumental, it's more tearful, just because we have had Michelle for an extra season, and it would be kind of nice to like see more of her dances. I don't know, like, I kind of like that episode how it was anyway, so just like really similar to that. But A Troop could be preparing for nationals again for that season, because obviously B Troop didn't like go in this world, so A Troop would still be going in this alternate universe. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it for What If Michelle Bought the Next Step. Like, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, this is the start of a few what if sort of things. I'm not going to say what the other titles are yet, just because there's some good ones and I don't want to spoil it. But if you did really enjoy it, please let me know, because obviously this is a new thing. I don't know whether you guys will like it, but if you did, please let me know. Also, let me know what if suggestions, just because like I've got like 3, but I'd love to know what ones you'd like to see. But yeah, thank you so much again for watching it. I hope you enjoyed finding out what it would be like if Michelle bought the next step. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you very soon for another next step related video. Oh yeah, by the way, next week's video is Easter related. I'll give you that. But anyway, I'll see you next week for another video. Bye guys.